Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's Germination Retail Roundtable webinar. My name is Mark Zinkowitz, and I serve as editor for Germination, and today I'm happy to be your host. Today we're talking about artificial intelligence, or AI, which we've all been hearing about lately with things like ChatGTP. Seems like AI is everywhere. So we wanted to do a little something about this because it's certainly timely and it's of a lot of interest to people. So away we go. We'll hear from 4 experts today who are going to talk about some of the intricacies around AI, its use, particularly in agronomy and the seed sector in general. And they're going to help us clear up some of these myths about this topic. Now, before we begin, I would just like to thank our sponsors, 2020 Seed Labs and CCAN, for their support. If you have a question, please type it into the chat box at any time. You don't have to wait until the end. Just go to the chat box, type in your question, and let us know who it is directed to. A recording of the webinar will be available afterwards, an on-demand version via our website. You'll also, if you registered today, you'll also get an email letting you know that the recorded version is up. You just click the link and it'll take you right to our website. Now, like I say, we have 4 experts on with us today. We have Abhinandan Kumar. Abhinandan is Molecular Business Manager at 2020 Seed Labs. We have Jeremy Boychin, Agronomy Research Extension Manager at Alberta Wheat and Barley. We have Jim Schwagert. He is President of Grow Alliance, based in the United States. And Sarah Foster, who is President of 2020 Seed Labs. Abby and Sarah are both based in Alberta, as is Jeremy as well. So welcome, everybody. How are you today?
Really well.
Very good. Thank you, Mark.
Doing great.
Doing good, Mark.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining me. And like I say, today we're going to be talking about AI, or artificial intelligence. It's going to be a little bit different today. I'm going to do more of a panel discussion style as opposed to a formal webinar style. I wanted to do that because this whole AI thing is really new for a lot of us. It's something that a lot of us maybe don't know too much about what AI is exactly, how it works, especially in the seed industry. So I wanted to keep things a little bit more conversational instead of doing long slideshows. I wanted to keep it a little bit more dynamic. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to this. Now, like I say, this whole AI thing is pretty new for many of us. The term AI, of course, stands for artificial intelligence. We all know about this. We've all heard about this lately, but I don't want to assume that everybody's well versed in this, right? Like, what exactly is AI? We all know about ChatGTP, but of course, AI has been used for a long, long time. I put this slide up because we've all seen movies like, for example, The Terminator and these sort of apocalyptic type movies that depict AI as this scary thing that's going to take over the world. And just like with anything, of course, the reality is a lot different than what we see in Hollywood films. So that's what we're going to be chatting about today, specifically as in terms of how this whole AI thing applies to agronomy. Now, Jeremy, you did something interesting this week. You took verbal descriptions of various crop diseases, and you put them into, you asked ChatGTP to give you a description of that crop disease. ChatGTP gave you a description of it, and then you took that and put it into an AI system that gave you a visual representation of what that AI system thinks these crop diseases look like. So I want to show that to everybody just to get started here because it's really interesting. So here we have Fusarium head blight. Now, ChatGTP told you that Fusarium head blight is bleached horror, grinning crimson infection, soft rotting flesh, tombstone kernels, shriveled and lightweight, darkened sunken base, shrouded in a dusty spore cloud. And so this is what it thinks Fusarium head blight looks like. Here we have bacterial leaf streak, an army of otherworldly, pint-sized, water-soaked, insidious monsters representing bacterial disease, wheatfield rain, destructive. We have blackleg. Oops. We have blackleg, darkened, ghoulish stems, cankered, rotting body, gnarled, shriveled pods. That's a pretty good description of blackleg from a visual description. But then, you put it through the AI, and then it's the job of the AI to interpret that. And that's what it gave you for blackleg, sclerotinia, bleached, wilting figure, haunting growth. I'm seeing a theme here with all of these skulls. And finally,
It was it was interesting because I asked it to anthropomorphize the disease in a way that it could be visually represented and connect more with whoever was looking at it. So it's trying to create that figure out of the disease. It's quite interesting.
yeah, it's trying to make it, relatable to people, trying to make it interesting for a human audience. Like here we have rhizoctonia, reddish brown, gnarled figure, sunken, rotting lesions. So kind of more of the same thing. So that must have, at the same time, it probably gave you a good laugh when the AI spit that out. But on the other hand, it was probably really neat to kind of see how this artificial intelligence algorithm interpreted that. Eh?
Yeah, and it the process is not simple, I'd say, and I wouldn't say that all of these were the first iteration or what it spit out first. There was some human altering to some of the descriptions, and the amount of times I had to put it through the visual development AI. Because sometimes you could just tell it didn't fully understand what was going on, so there was multiple iterations required, and I think it just shows the maybe the newness or the much more progress is required to get us to a stage where it's doing it immediately and perfectly the first time, if we ever get to that point.
Yeah, time will tell, and that's part of what we're going to talk about today is sort of the future of this whole AI thing and as it relates to our industry. Now, Abby, you have some experience with this whole AI thing. 2020 C Labs is working on a seed imaging project with a student from the University of Alberta. And we'll get to that in a moment. In fact, I'm just going to show a little slide of it here. But before we talk about that project specifically, Abby, can you explain this whole AI thing to us, what exactly it is and how it works as far as analyzing seed goes? Because obviously there's a lot of misunderstandings about AI. People hear artificial intelligence, and like I say, they get that image in their mind of robots and machines that are going to take people's jobs, and sort of these machines that have a mind of their own that can do things better than human beings can. But like I said, the truth is definitely not one end of the spectrum or the other. It's usually somewhere in the middle. So Abby, can you kind of walk us through a little bit what exactly AI is and how it applies to us?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. When we talk about AI, we are talking about machines or computer programs which have the capability to function or imitate human behavior, intelligent behavior, actually. And we always think of AI as a technology. I will go to that later on, but it's a subfield. We have technologies like machine learning, deep learning, neural language processing, and everything else, which comes under this whole umbrella of AI. So to say we are at that cusp of technology where this is the greatest thing that everybody is talking about it. Everybody is aware of it. And I think this is a boon to the technology itself. Going back to the conversation where I said AI itself is not a technology, it's a method or it's a methodology which becomes a technology later on. So it's not a singular technology. Now that brings to the point about how this technology or method can be used in a very specific manner. So as you can see that on the slide, we are using machine learning, and here the branch of AI we are using is computer vision. And you can see we took a lot of images and we trained a model which learns, and then it sees a completely different set of images and tries to predict based on what it has learned. So once trained, we can use this technology. Now it is a technology because we use it for a very specific purpose, right? To solve our problem, which is looking at seeds and predicting what they are. And this project is going from Glen, URIG Lab, University of Alberta, and we have an undergrad who is working on this. The funding and all those are coming from my tax and us, and we hope to see a lot of changes and change in a good way. Yeah, I would say that is it from what we are here doing with machine learning.
Yeah, so that's a big takeaway, is that AI is a methodology. It's not a single technology, right? So AI is sort of an umbrella term to describe what you're talking about, these computer algorithms that can sort of mimic human learning. And then that technology is then used to create various other technologies, right? And so AI is not one particular thing, but it's sort of like I guess you could say a way of doing things. And
Yeah.
I was fascinated to learn that like AI isn't new at all, right? Like the birth of AI took place in the 1950s with the advent of computer programs that could solve math problems. Obviously, these algorithms do a lot more today, but we're still waiting for AI to, fulfill some of the big predictions that have been made about it over the years. But Jim, I want to move over to you, as you wrote a column in Seed World magazine about this. Jim, you're president of Grow Alliance, based in Wisconsin. And Grow Alliance is a corn and soybean seed supply chain solutions company. You have operations in the United States and in South America. Now, Jim, you wrote in Seed World magazine, and I quote, you said, hiring quality field agronomists and product support positions is one of the most challenging tasks a seed brand has. Quality candidates need to have knowledge of the area's soils, disease and pest pressure, weather patterns, and have a deep understanding of the germplasm that they're representing. Every farm is different, and the interaction between the environment and the germplasm is nuanced and changes every year. Basically, the job is getting tougher to do, and the pool of candidates is getting smaller each year. So, Jim, I would ask you, how can AI help a seed brand or a retail operation with this?
Well, thanks for that question, Mark. And I just want to say one thing about the graphics that Jeremy pulled together. That maybe isn't what the disease looks like to a human, but that might be what it looks like to the plant when they when they start to get infected and they see that marauding, sinister figure coming after them. So I thought that was pretty interesting. I think where I think AI can really help out quite a bit is in extending what field agronomists can do. And by that, I mean allowing them to cover more ground and gather more information more quickly. So you can use drones to fly fields to get you a view of what's happening. You can diagnose plant diseases and plant health and monitor that using AI and some of the kind of technology that 2020 Seed Labs was talking about. And that allows the person who is analyzing that information to be able to cover way more acres than they could do, by themselves. Obviously, there's a lot of ground truthing that has to happen. You still have to get mud on your boots to be an agronomist in the field. But if you can take your on-the-ground experience combined with images, ratings, and all this information collated from different pieces of technology ran through AI to kind of diagnose what you're seeing, you can then really spread out a good agronomist across many, many more acres. So I think that's a huge opportunity.
So, Jeremy, you are a well-known agronomy expert in Canada, and I'm going to get to you right away. But Sarah, as president of 2020 Seed Labs, to kind of preface what I'm going to ask Jeremy about in a moment, Sarah, as we were talking about earlier, you were recently out and about at the AOSA meetings, not AOSCA, AOSA meetings, and the topic of regulatory and AI came up. And there's been a lot of talk, Sarah, about how AI will need to be regulated. Governments around the world are currently grappling with this. Sarah, do you think we need regulation in the AI sphere, and why? What's your take on that?
Thank you, Mark. I don't necessarily think we have to have regulation in the way that we think AI should be regulated. What I believe that we should have is that analysts around the world do a very good job of, well, anyone who's seed testing has to follow a very specific method, procedure, and a standard that gives reproducible and repeatable results, whether it's in our lab or another lab. So we're looking for uniformity in seed testing around the world. And as you know, the International Seed Testing Association has many members around the world that are doing that, and we all work towards the same thing. So as new technologies become available, and this is what I witnessed last week in Saskatoon at the AOSA SCST meeting, was there's a lot of work going on in AI, and there's, we're touching on being able to plant more efficiently, count germinations more efficiently, purity, analysis can be more efficient. And not only are we collecting data at the same time much quicker, but the idea is that, it offers more efficiency the same way as we're seeing in the farming, in agriculture. I mean, that's probably, to me, probably one of the most interesting, parts of AI. And something that obviously I'm very interested in the agricultural aspects of things, in that, we've got precision seeding, you've got drones, monitoring weeds and, diseases and that type of thing. And we're seeing that come here. So coming back to the regulatory aspects of it, and this was brought up in the meeting by CFIA, is that we absolutely would have to have something that we can all get accreditation for. This technology, in order to be accepted, has to be available to everybody. So, we need that level playing field, whether you're a large lab or a small lab. This technology needs to be available to everyone that's using it in order for it to be successful. And that's the regulation that we would need around it. So whether, CFIA are working on something, which they are, or, other universities around the world or other governments around the world, we're all looking for something that's going to be acceptable across the board.
Now, Sarah, you touched on efficiency. And that's what I wanted to ask you about, Jeremy, is talking, we talked a little bit in preparation for the webinar about efficiency, and you mentioned farm size, how, farm sizes are getting bigger, and how this whole AI thing could potentially have benefits in that regard. Jeremy, can you talk a little bit about how you think AI could advance agronomy in general, just in terms of the sheer size of farms and where things are going in that regard?
Yeah, and I think, well, first off, thanks for having me on. And I think Jim really hit this on the head in terms of increasing the efficiency of agronomists. And I think it's it's spectacular that 2 years ago we would not be having this conversation. And if you look at some of the Google trends of conversation around artificial intelligence, it was within the past year really that it exploded. And now we're having a webinar on it. The speed at which this is moving, I think, is something to revel in. But when we look at AI in agriculture specifically, I think I saw the number of $4 billion of investments in AI in agriculture by 2026. Like, that's a huge amount of investment. So what does that mean for agronomy? And I think a lot of them are looking at that agronomy decision-making aspect of, there's so many factors that go into decision-making when it comes to on-the-ground agronomy, farm decisions for crop management. We're looking at, take the example of, let's say, a fungicide application decision, right? What's the current environmental conditions? What are the potential future environmental conditions? What variety am I working with? What's the yield potential? All of these things, what's the cost of that crop? What's the cost of the application? All of these things are going to play a role in that decision. And they all play within each other. So one is going to impact the other, and it's really a push-pull, and there's this web of factors that makes this decision, and it becomes relatively challenging to get a good assessment of where things are and where they will be in the future. So I think AI has the capacity to really distillate all of that information that is so vast, this big data conversation we've had over the past number of years, and put that maybe into a little bit more digestible pieces of information for an agronomist to make on a field, on a farm, on a region basis, based on the understanding that they have of what does the soil look like, what's my general environmental conditions. Even more, what does my farmer want? Like, what are their goals, and how does that tie into that information? So agronomists are going to be able to make these decisions quicker, more applicable to that specific farm, and with more confidence, assuming that the algorithms that develop this AI technology continue to be accurate, which I can only assume will push farther in that direction. So there's great advantage that comes from these tools and how they'll integrate into our decision making on farm. But I think it's important to ask the questions of how this may impact the demographics of a farm. And Mark, you kind of mentioned, I think we mentioned earlier maybe about the biases of decision making, and this will help eliminate some of those biases of decision making. But when it comes to AI on farm, who actually is getting access to it? Who has the knowledge to access that AI on their farm? Who has the resources to utilize and maybe pay for the technology that these AI technologies are integrated within? The training that's involved. And I can only imagine a farm that's 50,000 acres is going to reap the economies of scale reward of an AI technology much greater than one that's 2,500 acres. So thinking about how these are integrated on farms in Western Canada there's huge benefit, but we also need to talk about how that's going to impact the demographics of farm. Is this going to further perpetuate large farms and take away from the small farm advantage? I think there's a lot of push and pull that needs to be discussed here.
Yeah, for sure. Now, Jim, like Sarah, you have a lot of experience with contra-season production in South America. And before I ask you about that, Jim, Abby, I'm curious, as somebody in management, Abby, how do you see AI as potentially impacting staff? We've been discussing over the last few minutes, potential impact on agronomists, on employees, staff members, the labor force in general. Abby, what are your thoughts on how the labor force could potentially be impacted?
Absolutely, Mark. I think the response would be very, very, very positive. It's just building on what everybody's talking about, how this brings in AI and data-driven decision-making, right? That frees up time for other people to work on something more pressing, right? And certainly, if somebody else is doing part of your job, it actually has to be upgraded so that you you learn that to enhance yourself again. So it's always a win-win situation, and you have to work with it rather than working against it. Then you look at if you have free time, it will increase the employee satisfaction, because now they can they're not that tired looking under the microscope and doing something else to improve their well-being, which is a big thing in business setting, right? Now we all of these are good, but we have to understand that AI is just a tool. It is just a tool, and there is absolutely nothing to be really scared about it. And I think our staffs would be really happy, because this is something which is going to help them in doing something way better, assisting them in making decisions faster. And that is what, as a service lab, we are looking at decreasing the time, or ETA, which we are obviously proud of us. So yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of considerations, but like you say, I think the overwhelming, just like any other technology. I know when radio came out, when television came out, people, there's this panic. We get this feeling of panic that right away, like, oh, what are we going to do about this? This is going to change everything, and I think there's always challenges with these things, like getting too much screen time is no good, but I don't think anybody would argue with the fact that television as a technology has been very positive in so many ways. It's united us as a planet. We can watch live broadcasts from around the world, and it really is incredible. So I think when it comes to staffing and employees, I think AI will be very similar. Now, Jim, I mentioned contra-season seed production. You and Sarah have a lot of experience going down to Chile and working on contra-season seed production. And Jim, as far as that goes, how do you see AI potentially impacting that, either positively, negatively? Do you think AI could be a help when it comes to contra-season seed production specifically?
Yeah, that's a great question. I do want to pick up just a little bit from what Abby was talking about, because the interesting thing in terms of how companies and businesses are thinking about this is, I had the opportunity to be with several seed companies at the ASTA Leadership Summit last week in Sacramento, and this topic came up in some of the roundtable discussion groups, and it was interesting to talk to leaders of different companies and how they're handling specifically things like ChatGPT. So there's definitely a lot of employee benefits, and so, but I got this wide range of reaction to how companies are handling it. So on one side, companies are using AI competency as part of their annual review process. So employees have to demonstrate competency in using this new tool, because the business recognizes the benefits that it can provide long term in this unbiased decision making and speed and different things like that. On the flip side, there's a company, more than one, that their company has decided to block access to certain AI tools from any company-owned device. And I thought that was kind of interesting. So I asked the why behind it. And they're worried that into like a ChatGPT, people might type in company-sensitive information. And of course, there's still this whole intellectual property conversation going on, where especially like a ChatGPT is just finding things from websites, articles, Twitter, wherever it can get it, and then giving it to you. So it's intellectual property that maybe other people have written or people have put into the system that's being then represented to you in the form of an answer. So I know the music industry has ran into this. There's AI of Frank Sinatra singing rap songs, and just all kinds of very interesting things going on there that the IP world is trying to deal with and figure out. And so companies really exist on this wide spectrum, which I guess isn't surprising for something that's brand new, but I think I just thought that was worth kind of pointing out and mentioning. also kind of piggybacking on what they were talking about in terms of speed, I think that's where it has a real big advantage for counter season nursery work. And most of what we do in Chile is nursery services. And so we're dealing with very few seeds. You're trying to get those seeds cleaned and get them back, get them counted, get them weighed. There's all this information that you have to gather. So, before you can send it, and doing it by hand or doing it just with human eyes and kind of the older way of counting and everything, it takes a lot of time. But if you can use these imaging tools and automated weighing machines and things like that to do it much faster. We were actually had a meeting here at our Wisconsin location about improving the flow through of our lab here. And it's incredible some of this imaging technology can do in terms of seed counting, weighing, and reduces the processing time from 5 minutes for a project to maybe 30 seconds to 45 seconds, and instantly upload that information into a spreadsheet. So really, really incredible tools. And if you've ever moved seed north to south, time is always of the essence. And so if you can shave time off there, I think that's a real nice opportunity.
Exactly. Sarah, I'm going to ask you to kind of piggyback on Jim's comments about, like work in the lab, the flow of work, and especially as it, might relate to contra-season production too, Sarah. What do you think benefits of this might be? Just in terms of lab workflow, employees, things like that. What are your thoughts on some potential benefits that we could see, on the ground level, right in the lab?
Yeah. Well, I totally agree with everything you say, Jim. Taking something that usually takes 5 minutes and having, results in 30 seconds all on a spreadsheet is absolutely what we're, driving at, because as you know, everything done down in contra season has to be turned around very, very quickly. And currently, everything that we do is very much done by us, the analysis under a microscope, and we do more quantity. So, in order to make sure that even though the fields are smaller typically, we are doing larger quantities because the customer wants more assurance in that, what we have is really representative of the entire lot. So some of the things that obviously we would be looking at are exactly what you say, counting, weighing automatically, and going beyond that, having the ability to have some sort of equipment, whether it's, the multispectral imaging or, whatever it may be, in terms of using that tool to analyze larger quantities. And a lot of the time we're doing 5 times or 10 times the amount that we would typically do for Canadian grade, and having that ability to turn it around really, really quickly. It would be a huge benefit to us because contra season also happens at our busiest time of the year too, and oftentimes it's a huge strain on staff, and thinking that, we can get that information back to Canada or back to the States or back to Europe, wherever it needs to go, so much quicker without having so much pressure on individuals that are there. And I mean, from any given day, we don't know what's coming in. We have an idea of what's being harvested, and we're literally analyzing that seed within hours of it coming off the field. So, having a tool that can assist us and take some of that stress away doesn't mean that we're going to be replaced. We're still going to have to be there. And this is the beauty of this tool. As Abby says, it's a tool. It's not going to replace us. You're still going to have to continue to keep teaching this equipment to do the work. And you're always going to have somebody that's qualified to actually validate what's coming, through. But at the end of the day, it's going to still be done so much, much quicker with much more accuracy and efficiency. And I welcome that wholeheartedly.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that it's not going to replace anyone. We actually have an audience question asking if do you believe AI will replace seed analysts? And I'll expand that and say, not just seed analysts, but agronomists. I mean, anybody working in this field. Sarah, you said that you don't believe it's going to replace anyone. And I'll throw this out there to you, Abby. What are your thoughts on this question of, well, AI, is it going to take our jobs? Is it going to replace any of us? When you hear that question, Abby, what pops to mind for you?
It's a no. But I know, as I said, it's a tool, and the tool makes you better, and the tool is useless without you using it.
Yeah.
So why don't we use it to make ourselves better and not be scared as the technology gonna take our jobs? It's gonna make because we are prone to errors, we are prone to fatigue, we are prone to making decisions. I mean, I don't eat and I'm just like, oh my God, what I'm looking at, can't even focus. And that are some real situations, when you are hungry and you still have to push on. At that time, AI would come in and literally save your day, I would say, give you less error in your results. Your back is aching, and there you go. You click on, and that's ready to go. You are while living. You still have that energy to go home and cook food and enjoy with your family. So at the end of the day, rather thinking that AI is going to take our jobs, to me it's going to improve our life 10 times. Give
Jeremy,
us time. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, Jeremy, what do you what's your thoughts when you hear that question of, is AI going to replace anyone? What jumps to mind for you?
Yeah, I fall in the range of, I see this shaping the roles more than replacing the people. How we conduct business, whether it be within a lab or as an agronomist in the field, it's going to shape how you do things. It's going to make some things easier, and it's going to make more room to do other requirements that AI can't do. And it's going to make you more efficient at your job. And I'm trying to think of metaphors and examples. Prior to having four-wheelers in the field, you certainly were walking a lot as an agronomist. And now that in certain regions, four-wheelers are part of that tool system that an agronomist would use to be more efficient at assessing fields, or a dirt bike, however you'd want to use, or even an iPad or a computer. Prior to having to flip through pages for information, you can utilize computer to store information effectively that is very relative to your role and the decisions that you're making, and do that more effectively. So will it replace? No. Will it shape? Do we need to adapt? Yes. I think the one thing that needs to be considered here with this discussion is, as I mentioned before, the potential acceleration at which the speed at which AI will likely move forward. I don't know, I have this concept that technology is a bit telescopic, in that as we move forward further and further into the direction of advanced technology, the speed at which it moves quicker. So how things will shape and move with AI will be at a faster speed than, say, picking up an iPad or a laptop. And I think that maybe comes to as a bit of a heated warning for maybe people who are a little bit cautious of dipping their toes into AI. I think there's certainly reason to be aware of it, to be knowledgeable of it, and to understand what it can and can't do. I've played with ChatGPT, and I can certainly see where it lacks, but I can certainly see where it can provide benefit to many different roles.
And I'll just remind our audience, if you have a question, just type it into the chat box. Jim, we had another question, actually another couple questions come in. One is, what would be a great breakthrough that AI could have in the seed industry that you'd love to see? Another one, if you had to predict the future, which agronomy problems have the highest value for AI? Which problem do you think may get solved first? Jim, just following up on what we've been talking about over the last few minutes, yeah, like in terms of potential benefits of this, I mean, I think we have established that, AI isn't this scary thing that's going to take our jobs, no more so than any other technology that's come out. So in terms of benefits, Jim, yeah, like for you, what do you think could be the potential boon to all this, or a big problem that it could potentially solve?
I think the biggest opportunity is in the predictive elements of AI. So if you think about the way we scout for diseases or insects or things like that in production fields today, you're looking at moth flights or reports from other places. You have all these different, universities with sentinel plots, and people are scouting and evaluating it. And we're, I think, do a decent job of understanding where things are going and what field they might be in next. But if you had everything about the fields, the current water holding capacity of the fields, the light penetration. If you think of soybeans, like light penetration, if you're trying to predict white mold, the variety susceptibility, all the historical weather data, the predictive weather data, and every report of white mold in the region, all of a sudden now you could potentially say, hey, in 2 weeks I'm going to have some white mold problems, so I'm going to go do some spraying today, so I don't have to worry about any damage. You can do these preventative activities in the field. And there's really cool technology getting built off of things where you, like John Deere See and Spray technology, you pair that with fluorescent exposure in plants. A company called Interplant is working on that, and now you're just treating individual plants that have a disease presence or a fungus presence or something like that. So I think it's helping us better predict what's going to happen, and then we can take preventative measures on the front side that save yield, that reduce cost, before we have the impact of some kind of disease. So to me, that's like kind of the holy grail and one of the big opportunities.
Now, before we sign off for the day, I sent 4 poll questions out to our audience. I just want to go through those, kind of get some insights into what our audience thought. I had asked what you consider to be the main advantage of using AI in seed retail. 45% said better decision-making based on data analysis. 36% said enhanced operational efficiency and cost reduction. 9% said improved customer experience and satisfaction, and then another 9% said increased seed production and yield. Another question was regarding what you see as the biggest challenge in adopting AI technologies in the seed retail sector. 83% said resistance to change from traditional practices. So there's a lot of concern out there that people might be resistant to the changes that this is all going to bring. 16% said lack of skilled personnel for implementation and management. I had another question regarding which emerging AI technology you think will have the most transformative effect on the seed retail sector. 75% said computer vision for seed quality inspection. 25% said machine learning algorithms for seed breeding and selection. And finally, I had asked which technology do you think AI, or which area of the industry do you think AI can have the biggest impact on? 50% said seed quality, 33% supply chain optimization, and 16% customer personalized recommendations. So a lot of different thoughts from our audience on what exact impacts this could potentially have. I'm going to take one more question before we sign off for the day that just came in from a wheat breeder at AAFC, who says, regarding AI and jobs, I'm seeing a trend where data collection would become easier and our jobs would shift towards ground truthing and analysis of the AI collected data. This is similar to what we saw with genome sequencing and analysis of sequencing data. So that's interesting that plant breeders, they're not going to lose their jobs as a result of all this, but he feels that his job will simply change, that it will become different. And I'll just go around the table once more here. Sarah, in terms of, what you do, seed analysts especially, do you think that the jobs could just kind of change in some way, Sarah?
I think they'll get better. There's absolutely no way that we can be replaced. I think we'll get better. We'll be able to reach a broader scientific community. We already thought we had that, but again, it's being able to share information. If you're looking at something and you're not sure of it, even if you have built that into the model, you've got somebody across the world that can assist with that. And I think seed testing is such a complicated business. I just embrace this. I mean, I'm at an age where I could actually say, oh, I'm done, like I'm retiring soon. But in actual fact, this is something that I've thought, for a long time, is something that could really have such a rewarding experience for people in our industry, particularly in my industry.
Abby, what about you? How do you see your job changing in some regards?
To be honest, it makes me so much productive.
Yeah.
I can ask a question, I can ask it to write a project and give me the sub options and sub management parts, and it just aligns so well that it makes you think more. And I think part of my job is thinking and find technologies which we can bring in and integrate, and it helps you a lot. So does it make me productive? Absolutely, yes. Would I have been less productive? And now I know that I was. So it makes your job better.
You were?
Yeah.
Jim, what's your take on that?
Well, I definitely think in the high level jobs, and we're seeing this with technology kind of everywhere, it's that the higher level jobs become more important, more technically, you have to be more technically astute to do the job of seed cleaning, of lab activity. I do think, and we've got a couple of case studies we're working on right now where some of the hourly part-time work that we would have and just like evaluating seed treatment coverage, for example. So we do an evaluation of every single lot of seed that we produce. It goes through the lab after it's been treated, and we do an analysis to say, is the treatment coverage acceptable, for the client? And that's just being done visually today. So as you move between different analysts, they're going to look at it differently. Of course, we have reference samples, but boy, sometimes even the time of day, what kind of natural light you have coming through the window is going to have an impact on that. But if you have an AI tool that has a baseline that it's looking at all the time and everything is exactly the same, it can look at those samples incredibly fast, rate them, on a scale positive to not meeting the spec, and can instantly do it without any bias, without any delay, without any eye fatigue. Its back never gets sore. So I think there's a lot of those kind of repetitive, more basic things that AI will replace. I think in the higher level analysis of what's going on and deep understanding, those positions are always going to be safe. But I do see the entry level hour element being cut in some of these cases.
Jeremy, I'll give you the last word today. How do you see your job, the job of an agronomist, possibly changing as a result of all this?
It's so interesting thinking about this and all the potentials that we can run into with AI technology and how that may impact. And I think one factor maybe that we haven't threshed into, and I'm sure we don't have time to, is the human factor of not everyone not everyone perceives their role or manages their role the same way. So how that tool actually comes in and integrates itself with how you manage your role can be different. And I think the most extreme example would be, someone who would like to be maybe more lazy with their role, and AI gives them some examples of directions to go, and you don't cross-check, you don't ground truth, and you hand that off to the producer, and the producer's maybe wanting more relationship with their agronomist, wanting more understanding of why that decision is being made. And then you take the contrast of that, of AI sends in information about decision making of a crop management decision, and you cross-check references from previous years by increasing the strength of your AI model, having a sit-down conversation with your producer and saying, here's what we're seeing based on the models, based on my understanding of the direction that you want to go. We have these 3 directions based on your risk aversion this year, last year, next year. What does that mean for you? What does that mean for your farm? Which direction would you like to go? So I think it really depends on how you want to approach a tool like this and how you want to approach your role, of how it can shift. But it also brings in the discussion of, how does your employer see that tool? Where do they want to see that be incorporated, and how you're going to utilize it? So I think it'll be different for every person. But I think in general, we're in a very technical industry. We want to understand what's going on. We want to ask questions. We want to have discussions and move things forward. So I think those of us that are thinkers, that want to understand further how some of these tools mesh together and provide benefit and help with decisions, I think it'll even, as Abby mentioned, I think it'll strengthen our desire to make some of these decisions and strengthen our confidence in making those decisions, and create maybe a little bit more fulfillment in the roles that we're doing, and maybe eliminate some of those tedious tasks that we're less than thrilled to be spending 3 hours or 4 hours in front of a computer implementing.
Yeah, one would hope so. We shall see what happens. The future is not set, and it is what we make it. So we'll see where humanity goes with all this. Thank you so much, everybody, for your time today. I really enjoyed this conversation. This was terrific. Thank you to Jim, Sarah, Abby, Jeremy for your time today. I really enjoyed myself. Again, I just want to thank our sponsors before we sign off for the day, 2020 C Labs and CCAN. Thank you so much for your support. A recording of this webinar will be available in the coming hours, so everyone stay tuned for that. Jim, Sarah, Abby, Jeremy, have a great day.
You too.
Thanks, Mark.
Thanks so much.
Take care.
Thank you. And thank you to our audience for joining us today. This is Mark Zinkowitz of Germination Magazine signing off. Have a great day, everybody. Take care.